At the dawn of the Horus Heresy, Horus sought a way to purge the loyalist elements from Space Marine legions which would later become the Traitor Legions. With this first act of rebellion, he would eliminate all those whose loyalty to the Emperor of Mankind was suspected to be unshakable and uncorruptible by the influences of chaos, betraying those of his own legion and others who thought to be following the loyal War Master in his crusades in support of the Imperium of Mankind. Horus would find his solution in the rebellious world of Istvaan III, which had previously been brought to compliance only 15 years earlier by the Primarch Corax and his Raven Guard Legion. After fierce fighting, they had surrendered and accepted the imperial truth. Vardis Prahl was appointed as the Imperial Planetary Governor to continue the task of bringing the world to compliance, due to his former military service and subsequent political career as a member of the Ultima Segmentum Court. Prahl is known to have begun carrying out this task, but a powerful warp storm severed contact with the planet for 6 years. Then, a weak, garbled transmission was received by a passing patrol ship that was already 2 years old, indicating that a religious rebellion against the Imperium had occurred, led by Prahl himself, likely swayed to chaos by members of a cult on the planet or the effects of the warp storm itself. This affront to the Imperium, led by an officially appointed governor, could not stand. The Emperor and the Council of Terra tasked Horus with crushing this rebellion. In so doing, Horus was able to select only the loyal elements from the Sons of Horus, formerly the Luna Wolves, the Emperor's Children, Death Guard, and World Eater's legions. Over 200,000 Space Marines in total were assembled. At the same time, Horus used his position as War Master to set the stage for the remaining legions as well. 3 of the strongest and most loyal legions, the Dark Angels, the Blood Angels, and the Ultramarines, were sent on campaigns in distant and dangerous sectors where news would be slow to reach them and they would be unable to quickly act. The White Scars and the Imperial Fists were too close to the Emperor at the time to be contacted or discreetly relocated by Horus. The Space Wolves and the Thousand Sons were currently embroiled in their own conflict, and the remaining legions, the Night Lords, Alpha Legion, Iron Warriors, Raven Guard, Salamanders, and Iron Hands, were already embarked on their own campaigns and were not to be involved at this stage of Horus's plans. On the day of the attack, the loyalist Space Marines, approximately a third of each legion's full strength, descended by drop pod on the hive city of Kir Vanak, also called the Coral City. This was to be a lightning strike and had very limited gunship or vehicle support, with each chapter given their own primary objective. The Emperor's Children would locate Vardis Prahl, presumed to be located in the city's main seat of government, the Precentor's Palace. The World Eaters would seize the city's main transport network to cripple the Traitor's ability to coordinate a response to the attack. The Death Guard would besiege the Imperial-built fortifications and crush the rebel garrison. And lastly, the Sons of Horus would destroy Siren Hold, an ancient temple complex home to Psyker witches known as the War Singers. The drop pod assault was slowed by purposefully inaccurate drop coordinates, which caused some squads to be delayed or cut off. The enemy resistance was also much higher and well armed than expected, many of the defenders being former Imperial Guard regiments now turned into insane cultists of the Chaos God Slanesh. Their defensive lines reinforced by mortars, autocannons, artillery, and even heavy tanks. Despite this, the Death Guard Legion, supported by the few gunships, tanks, and Legio Mortis Titans assigned to the mission, relentlessly cleared every trench and bunker. The battle intensified around the Siren Hold as the Istvanian War Singers rallied their cultists. These were Chaos Psychers able to manipulate sound in order to fly, create protective shields, and scream with enough force to shatter Space Marine ceramite armor. Captain Garviel Loken of the Sons of Horus fought deep within the Siren Hold and defeated the remaining War Singers in a corpse-filled Chaos Shrine, later named Death's Tomb. The World Eater's objective initially went much more smoothly, as they dropped in amongst the city's defenders and slaughtered them, being no match for the Space Marines in the urban environment. But then, an unnatural psychic scream echoed through the city, sending both its remaining defenders and all of its inhabitants into an uncontrollable rage. All of its citizens swarmed the World Eaters and with sheer numbers forced them into a frantic fight, fighting back to back and running out of ammo against overwhelming numbers. The seat of Imperial authority, the Presenter's Palace, was designed to shrug off orbital bombardment and deter ground assaults. The Emperor's children overcame this with precision drops on all entrances and on the roof, from which they used dreadnoughts and melta-guns to tunnel their way in from above. After gaining entry, they fought fiercely, floor by floor, against surgically modified elite warriors using unusual weapons that fired lethal blasts of sound and darts of liquid metal. Eventually, they reached the throne room, where they encountered Prahl himself. There was no doubt of Prahl's involvement in the rebellion, as he launched himself into a fierce fight with Captain Lucius. The renowned swordsman prevailed, though, and he severed Prahl's head with a mighty blow. At once, the psychic scream was silenced, and the source of the defenders' rage and power waned. The rebellion was then put down within hours. The victory could not be long celebrated. As communication with the fleet was severed, the Titans retreated from the city, and battleships positioned themselves into low orbit. The fleet opened fire with munitions carrying the Life Eater virus, capable of turning any living thing it touched into sludge within moments. All life on the planet's surface, 8 million lives, were gone. Noxious gases clogged the atmosphere and were then ignited by a land strike, which engulfed the planet in a firestorm, scouring the surface. But shortly before these events unfolded, Loyalists still within the fleet above learned of this terrible plot and sought to warn their battle brothers on the planet below. Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow of the Death Guard rallied his men and commandeered the Eisenstein, a heavy frigate. He was able to broadcast a warning before escaping in an effort to warn the Emperor of Horus's betrayal. Captain Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children stole a Thunderhawk gunship and raced to the surface to deliver his warning in person. Those who heard and believed him made their way into airtight underground bunkers. Any who remained on the surface were consumed by the Life Eater virus, which even the mighty armor of the Space Marines could not stop, or were engulfed in flames afterwards. In orbit, several ships, still commanded by Loyalists, valiantly tried to stop the bombardment, but were ultimately outnumbered and destroyed. Within the ships of the traitor fleets, remaining suspected Loyalist Space Marines and Imperial Guard regiments were ambushed, some managing desperate last stands or retreating within the bowels of the ships to sabotage or just hold out until they were hunted down. After the firestorm ceased and the Loyalist Space Marines re-emerged from bunkers and catacombs and contact was established, nearly 2/3 of the original 100,000 still lived. Confused and enraged, the Loyalists defiantly hailed the fleet demanding answers. Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters, impulsively descended from his flagship with 50 companies to finish off the Loyalists, disrupting Horus's plan to unleash a second orbital bombardment. With no other option, Horus committed all of his forces into a ground invasion, thus ensuring they were all blooded by combat and committed to their new cause. Many of the surviving Loyalist World Eaters met their Primarch and former battle brothers and engaged in a brutal battle in the streets of the ruined city. Outnumbered, with little support, and facing the might of their Primarch, they were eventually defeated. The traitor legions moved in to retake the Presenter's Palace and other fortifications from the Loyalists whom they assumed to be in disarray, but found them to be dug in and fortified. The fighting turned into a war of attrition, as the Loyalists used the terrain of the ruined city as they engaged in ambushes and guerrilla tactics against the superior traitor forces on this doomed world. The Loyalists found leaders in Captain Tarvitz, who had saved them from their fate, and Captain Loken. Both coordinated the resistance and inspired the Loyalists to fight on. Forsaking the new name of their legion and their Primarch, the Sons of Horus returned to their original name, the Luna Wolves. After 2 months, the Loyalists had inflicted heavy casualties on their attackers and still held both the Presenter's Palace and Siren Hold. However, the Death Guard Loyalists had suffered a devastating pincer attack from both Angron and their Primarch Mortarion. Many fell in battle as the forts and trench lines they occupied were stormed, with only a small number breaking out of the tightening noose around them. The tide of battle turned against the Loyalists, though, as the storms ravaging the atmosphere of the dying planet began to calm, which allowed the traitors to deploy all of their heavy support vehicles and Titan legions. Loyalists were hunted through the streets and pushed back to their last stronghold, the Presenter's Palace. The Titans of Legio Mortis unleashed their volcano cannons on the palace, easily breaching its formidable defenses. The way for the traitors was open, and they surged inside. Captain Lucius, who had been the one to personally defeat Vardus Prahl months prior, had come to resent Tarvitz in that time, and made a secret deal to betray the Loyalists in exchange for being allowed to return to the Emperor's Children. He tricked Captain Solomon Demeter, also of the Emperor's Children, into killing 30 loyal Space Marines and opening the way for the traitors before killing him as well. Lucius then challenged Tarvitz to a one-on-one duel, but was defeated and fled back to join the traitors. Despite this personal victory, the palace would fall before the unrelenting traitor assault. At the same time, a brutal attack was launched upon the Siren Hold, the traitorous elements of the Emperor's Children breaking through the Loyalist defenses and routing them within an hour. Captain Loken made a last stand against Horus's right-hand man, Abaddon, but was defeated and wounded. Now that the Loyalists had been flushed out of their remaining strongholds, additional orbital bombardments rained down on them. Any still alive were then hunted down throughout the ruined city. Horus withdrew all of his forces from the planet and pounded the city flat with orbital bombardments. The Loyalists had been defeated, but at a heavy cost in manpower, resources, and time. It had definitely not been the clean precision strike Horus had planned for. The Eisenstein had also escaped to warn the Emperor of Horus's plan. So while technically a victory for the traitor legions, the betrayal on Istvaan III had been a disaster. The loyal Marines had managed against the odds to delay and weaken their assailants, holding them up for months, allowing the Imperium to react to this new unexpected threat from within.